So this is a different style of video than my usual essay type, but I thought it'd be fun to just laugh at the Grammys, or maybe be surprised by the Grammys. So today I'm going to be ranking all 28 Rap Album of the Year winners at the Grammys, from best to worst. And just as a little extra category, I thought I'd take a look at the nominations and decide what I believe should have won. So yeah, let's just get straight into this.
Hey, not gonna work. Can we go thrift shopping?
No.
I mean, what do I really need to say about this? It's probably the most infamous Grammy win of all time, and sparked that really weird text from Macklemore to Kendrick Lamar. And I don't necessarily think this album is the worst of all time or anything, but its main downfall is in comparison to the competition. Nothing was the same, Magna Carta, Yeezus, Good Kid Mad City, one of the strongest batches of nominations ever. I have no idea how this album won. Anyway, I'd probably pick Good Kid Mad City as the winner, as most people would. This is comfortably one of the worst Grammy wins of all time. Look, the old heads may hate me for this, but I'm genuinely not a fan of Luda in the slightest. Plus, I think he has better albums anyway, with Word of Mouth and Back for the First Time. I just think Release Therapy is a product of its time, and just hasn't aged well. In terms of nominations, Game Theory is a really solid album, King by T.I. is great, but I'm picking Lupe's Food and Liquor rather comfortably here. Now look, this may surprise some people. If you follow me on Twitter, then you'd know Jay is my favourite rapper of all time, and no one really comes close. But the more I think about it, the more this album is actually my least favourite Hove record. Not a single track does anything for me, and once again, I know the old heads are probably pissed at that. Anyway, I'd be lying if I said I was a huge fan of any of these nominations. They could have definitely chose better picks, but Big Pun's Capital Punishment is the clear standout.
Oh, I love my wife. I love my wife. Ah! Let's go.
I'm ready for all the hate. But once again, if you follow me on Twitter, you'd know my opinion on Chance the Rapper already. I'm just not a fan in the slightest. I do think Colour and Book is probably his best project and has some redeeming moments like Angels and Juke Jam, but apart from that, I just don't like this tape at all. And I know he has a very tight-knit, cult-like fan base, but Chance just isn't for me. And it doesn't help that this year had some great nominations. Major Key is actually a very good DJ Khaled project. De La Soul released a great album. Views by Drake has aged really well. But then it's between Blank Face and The Life of Pablo. And I think Schoolboy Q deserved this one.
Of course I'm on a torrent. I'm driving a Porsche over the floorboards, over the...
Give me all the hate, but this record does nothing for me. Eminem is very hit or miss for me, and personally this is just a massive miss. I don't really have much to say about it, but in a year of pretty solid nominations, The Roots, How I Got Over definitely should have won.
First off, who are you?
Look, I'm ready for the comments. How dare I believe that Cardi B released a better album than Chance the Rapper, Jay-Z and Eminem. But you know what? She did, in my opinion. Invasion of Privacy is actually a really decent hip-hop record, and I believe once again that this album's main downfall was just the strength of competition, because if you compare it to the other albums, it is kinda laughable. Victory Lap is Nipsey's best work to me. Astroworld is incredible and had pretty much the whole world in a chokehold. Daytona is so efficient with its short runtime and just executed perfectly, but Mac Miller's Swimming means a lot to me, so I'm going with that.
If I take you everywhere, then well, you wouldn't know how to walk.
Look, Nas was probably robbed of about 3 Grammys before he finally won one, and I'm really happy he won one, but it shouldn't have been for this album. It's not a bad album, but him and Hit Boy have developed so much since this album, and like I said, Nas could have easily won 3 or 4 Grammys before this, so that's on the Grammys. Nonetheless, it was great to see him win, but in terms of nominations, Royce and D-Smoke released good albums, but it's really a battle between A Written Testimony and Alfredo, and I believe Gibbs and Alk deserved this one.
While you're in a Ford Taurus, getting an abortion and a divorce at the same time to hear us affording.
Relapse is decent to me, but nothing much more than that. It has some incredible tracks like Beautiful and Deja Vu, but the rest just kind of feels like a product of its time to me. But that's a case with a lot of hip hop albums from the late 2000s. It's a solid Eminem record, but nowhere near his best. And in the same bracket as Q-Tip's Renaissance and Mos Def's The Ecstatic, it shouldn't have won. I'm giving this to Mos Def.
What's next?
You know, I kinda hate Diddy, but this album is pretty decent. Is that mainly down to the features? Yeah. Whether it be Hove, Buster, or Biggie. But should it have won? Well, no. When you have Wu-Tang Forever and Life After Death nominated. I'm giving this to the Wu. This is a good album, and one you should definitely check out if you haven't already. Do I think it's aged as well as a lot of albums around the same time? Probably not, but it's still a great release and contrasts what was blown up in this time period. But once again, in a strong nomination list, I don't think it should have won. I'm going with Tupac's Me Against the World here.
Look what I'm planning. I'm planning to do all this while you're panicking.
Oh look, it's another Eminem album. And one I kind of appreciate almost a decade later, despite me hating a lot of tracks like Rap God and Berserk. I love tracks like Bad Guy and Love Game. I view this as the last good Eminem album if I'm being honest, and it was a decent pick in a year of pretty weak nominations. With that being said, Schoolboy Q should have definitely took this Grammy home with Oxymoron.
I want to Fannikins trying to get up a Planikins.
Oh look, another Eminem album, and this isn't even the end of it. But yeah, Eminem's debut is pretty fucking good. I think some of it is aged poorly, but overall, it's stood the test of time, and yeah, it's easily one of the best albums of this year, and well, was the start of a very good Eminem run. But in a kinda lackluster selection, The Roots' Things Fall Apart stands as one of the greatest albums ever released.
All of the Planikins, Stanikin, Panikins.
This is basically an Eminem video at this point, and we aren't even done. The Eminem Show is a really great album, and the end of his iconic run. Superman, Sing for the Moment, and Till I Collapse are three of my all-time favourites. Once again, I don't think it's perfect, but I don't think any Eminem album is. But the highs on this album can really compete with almost any 2000s hip-hop album. And you know what? Comparing it to the nominations, it definitely deserved the win.
I'm in a cabana in a Janet.
Right, enough with the Eminem talk. I know people will hate me for this, but once again, if you follow me on Twitter, you already know my controversial opinion. It's a good album, and if it wasn't for the absolutely absurd highs on this record, it wouldn't be this high. But those highs, fuck me, they're unbelievable. Whether it be The Way I Am or Stan, literally two of the best songs I've ever heard, but the majority of the rest just isn't for me. And I understand people hold it on a much higher pedestal, but that's just my opinion. But the nominations were once again pretty weak, so yeah, Eminem probably deserved this one.
1, 2, 3.
This is where we start to reach albums that are amazing, and the score is no different. It's one of the most successful albums of all time, with tracks like Killing Me Softly and Ready or Not, with deeper cuts like How Many Mics also being incredible. It isn't flawless to me, but is 100% deserving of a Grammy. It's a landmark album. With that being said, I think Tupac and Tribe come close, but I think this is the first winner on the list that I'm gonna stick with. The highs on the Carter 3 are just incredible. 3-Peat, Mr. Carter, A Milli, Let the Beat Build, generational tracks, and it's the album that pretty much catapulted Wayne into superstardom. But I just think there's a couple of tracks I could do without here, a couple of misses, and I don't even think it's the best in the series. I'm taking the Carter 2 and 5 over it, but this is still really a magnificent album. And to be honest, the only nomination I could have went with over it is Lupe Fiasco's The Cool. Speakerbox and The Love Below is an iconic double album, possibly the most iconic of all time. I do prefer The Love Below by quite some margin, but both are extremely solid in their own right. Both Big Boy and Andre explore their own artistry on each side and well deliver some of the greatest songs of the 2000s, and that's not mentioning the timeless hits like Roses and obviously Hey Ya, and my personal favourite being A Life in the Day of Benjamin Andre. And in a year of very strong nominations, I still believe Outkast deserved this one. I know I probably enjoyed this album a lot more than some people, and I kinda get why the reception is very mixed, but I personally love it and believe it's at the very top of albums released this decade. The realizations and introspection on this record can get downright gut-wrenching at times, and as always Kendrick developed new ideas and let his creativity shine through. Like I said, I get the criticism and I don't think it's near Kendrick's best, but I love it. And despite Pusha T's album being pretty good, none of the nominations even come close.
Okay.
You know, the further I get down this list, the more I realise I may have upset some old heads. But the thing is, blame the Grammys for not nominating better albums. This list would look a lot different if they nominated better albums. Anyway, Call Me If You Get Lost is one of the best albums this decade, and honestly it's just another step in Tyler's incredible artistic evolution. This time he returned to create a true hip hop album, and he did it. It's so coherent and blissful at times, while it also does have its darker moments. Tyler always creates a special feeling and emotion with his albums, and this one was no different. And as much as I loved the Donda rollout, none of these nominations come close to this Tyler record. Back to Kendrick Lamar, and what an album. Damn is Kendrick's most commercial album to date, and was a huge moment. I remember I was in school and it was one of the first hip hop records that really got hyped up while I was in school. And to pack it in such thought-provoking content like he did with some feat. Duckware, Fear and Triple X are some of his best songs to date, and honestly this album deserved a Grammy. You all know the album, so I don't feel like I need to say much. Some of you would most likely rank it lower, and that's okay. And by the way, we need to talk about these nominations because fucking hell this might be the best list the Grammys has ever put together. Any one of these albums would be a worthy winner, but Kendrick takes it for me. Is this controversial? I don't know. I feel like a lot of people would have this top 3. Get rid of Blame Game and Hell of a Life and it's perfect. It was actually like my first ever favourite album and I still have the poster hung up in my room. Once again, this is an album that has been discussed a million times, so there isn't much to say. It's genius. A little tweaks and it'd be much higher, but come on, an album with tracks like Devil in a New Dress and Power will always be a good pick, and none of the nominations even come close. Oh look, it's another Kanye West album, and another fucking masterpiece. Graduation is just anthem after anthem, flashing lights, Everything I Am. 2 tracks I'm not huge on, but the rest is just perfect. It has to be this high. It's one of the best albums of the 2000s and very near the top of Kanye's discography. A very good pick from the Grammys, and honestly none of the nominations come close to the level of Graduation.
I say
Take Care is a weird one because I either see people saying they adore this album or saying they find it massively overrated. Well, I fucking love it, and it's tied with If You're Reading This for his best project. It's groundbreaking and one of the most successful albums of the 21st century. We have some of the best R&B cuts like Marvin's Room and Cameras, and we also have some incredible hip hop tracks like The Ride, Lord Knows and Underground Kings. I mean, the album opens with Over My Dead Body, which is one of my all-time favourite intros. I know a lot of people wouldn't rank this over some of the classics I've already mentioned, but I believe Drake deserved this Grammy. But with all that being said, if we're looking at the nominations, I'm still picking something over it. The Roots Undone is like a top 20 album ever for me, so I'm gonna have to go with that. Do you know what's funny? I have this as a top 5 rap album to ever win at the Grammy, yet it's not even in my top 2 Outkast albums. That's just a testament to Outkast's catalogue though. Stankonia is so influential, the industrial production still sounds futuristic to this day. Andre and Big Boy are just geniuses. The album launched them into the mainstream due to Miss Jackson, and the concept is just pulled off perfectly. And even with a very close contender with Jay-Z's The Blueprint, Outkast 100% deserved this Grammy for a landmark album in hip-hop. If you can't tell already, I'm basically a super fan of Kanye's early catalogue, and his sophomore album is really something special. Working with John Bryan, Ye would deliver pretty much a perfect hip hop album. It has everything you want from a Grammy win: influence, impact, classic tracks, critical acclaim, commercial numbers. And you know, I see a lot of people nowadays rank this at the lower end of Kanye's discog, and I just can't get behind that at all. It's one of the very best albums of the 2000s. Common's B is a close contender, but Late Registration blows every other nomination out the water.
Okay.
I was so conflicted with this placement, and to be honest, I'm still not sure. Let's be real here, Igor isn't a rap album, and just should have won in the general Album of the Year category. But I decided to just base the placement on the quality of the record, and Igor is fucking quality. Top tier album, that means a lot to me. It may not have the longevity that some of these albums may have, but I guarantee in a decade's time, people will still be holding this album on a high pedestal. It's much deserving of a top 3 placement. The only track I'm not huge on is I Don't Love You Anymore, but every single other song is perfection to me. None of the nominations come close, let's be honest. This is the first album on the list I can call 100% perfect. Every song is 10 out of 10, and once again just ticks every box of a classic album, apart from maybe Influence. It's comfortably the best hip hop album post 2010. What do I really need to say? It's one of the most critically acclaimed albums of all time, and you've all heard it, and you all probably love it. No praise will ever be enough for this generational album. Is this a basic pick? Kinda, but it's just that good that it's hard to avoid being basic. And to be honest, the nominations were really great, especially if you're reading this, but this is just one of the most deserved Grammy wins of all time. The College Dropout is my favourite album of all time. It has everything you want from a classic album. Influence, yes. Impact, yes. Longevity, yes. Iconic songs, yes. Progress the genre, yes. Commercial success, yes. It's just perfect to me, and carries so much nostalgia value for me as well. Like, come on, Kanye's writing on this album was on another level. Just like that All Falls Down or Last Call, and the production, don't even get me started on it. It's an absolute staple of the genre, and a must listen for any music fan. For me, there wasn't really any competition for the #1 spot. It was always going to be Kanye's debut album. Do you know what's funny? After all that praise, I wouldn't have minded if the Grammys gave this to another nomination, because Jay-Z's The Black Album is also in my top 5 ever. So yeah, but this one belongs to Kanye West. Let me know what you agree with or what you most likely disagree with. I'm expecting some crazy comments. I know this is different than my usual essay style video, but I do want to start switching it up and mixing in some more personal videos. So I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.